Welcome back, family, to the Tariff Tune-In, your go-to source for international trade and tariff updates. I'm Derick Holt, International Trade Partner at Wiley. In this tune-in, we're doing a fall wrap-up, breaking down all of the major tariff moves since early October. Now, let me tell you this, the government shutdown did not stop tariffs. We have new investigations, new trade deals, and even a rollback that probably is going to affect your Thanksgiving meal. Now, there's a lot to cover here, so let's start with a recap of the 7 tariff buckets. In bucket 1, we have AD/CVD tariffs. In bucket 2, you have 301 tariffs. Bucket 3, Section 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum. In bucket 4, there's the 232 tariffs on other products. In buckets 5, 6, and 7, these are reserved for the IEEPA tariffs. Bucket 5 is for fentanyl. Bucket 6 is for the reciprocal tariffs, and bucket 7 is for your secondary tariffs. Now, starting with bucket 1, AD/CVD tariffs. Because there was a 43-day government shutdown, there were no new AD/CVD orders that were published from October 1st to mid-November. Commerce has told deadlines by 47 days, so we're going to expect new AD/CVD orders to start rolling out this month and then into December. Moving on to bucket 2, the Section 301 tariffs on China had 2 major developments this fall. First, USTR found that China's shipbuilding, maritime, and logistics practices burden U.S. commerce and announced fees from $14 to $50 per ton on Chinese-built vessels starting on October 14th. However, shortly afterward, the administration struck a deal with China that suspended fees for 1 year. These fees are now suspended through November 10th, 2026. Second, on the broader 301 program, USTR extended 178 exclusions through November 29th and opened a new 301 investigation into China's Phase 1 compliance, with comments due on December 1st and a hearing scheduled for December 16th. Moving on to bucket 3. Bucket 3 is for Section 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum. Now, there haven't been any new moves since the summer, so that means 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum and their derivatives are still in effect. Bucket 4 is for Section 232 tariffs on other products. Now, we saw a big movement and a lot of action in October in this bucket. We have a new proclamation under Section 232 that imposes 25% tariffs on medium and heavy duty trucks and parts, and then a 10% tariff on buses effective November 1st. A rebate of 3.75% is available for domestically assembled trucks through 2030 to spur domestic investment and production. Meanwhile, separate 232 investigations were launched into medical equipment and then also the robotics and industrial machinery industries, and these were discussed in the last Tariff Tune-In. Buckets 5 through 7 are reserved for the IEEPA tariffs. Now, the action here was split between the courtroom and the negotiation table. On November 5th, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments on whether IEEPA can support the administration's broad emergency tariff regime. Now, justices across the ideological spectrum showed significant skepticism, pressing the government on whether these tariffs actually function as taxes, which would then fall into Congress's Article 1 authority. However, some justices explored the government's counter-arguments about foreign affairs powers, and overall, if you look at the oral argument, the tone leaned skeptical to doubtful. Now, the case is on an expedited schedule, and decisions are expected at least probably by the first quarter of 2026. However, while the Supreme Court deliberates, the IEEPA tariffs remain in effect, and importers still have to pay the duties. Now, at the negotiation table, there were 3 big shifts. In bucket 5, there was a rate cut in the fentanyl-related IEEPA tariffs, with the China origin rate dropping from 20% to 10% on November 10th. In bucket 6, there was a major rollback for food and agricultural tariffs, carving out 237 products from the reciprocal tariff regime. This includes products such as coffees, teas, bananas, tropical fruit, and some fertilizers. These exclusions went into effect on November 13th, just in time for Thanksgiving. Also in bucket 6, we saw a wave of reciprocal tariff deals this fall. Once finalized, these agreements with Malaysia, Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam preserve the 19 to 20% reciprocal tariff rates. However, they also create a path for 0% tariffs for selected goods. The US also has a deal with Switzerland, which will cut tariffs on most Swiss products from 39% to 15% in exchange for a major investment package in the US. Now, the rate on Swiss goods does not change until the deal is finalized, which is expected to be sometime in early 2026. Additional framework agreements with El Salvador, Ecuador, Guatemala, and Argentina were recently announced, and they focus on reducing non-tariff barriers, expanding market access, and eliminating tariffs on US exports. However, these agreements still need to be finalized in the coming weeks, so they're still being negotiated. And bucket 7 is for secondary IEEPA tariffs. There's no new movement here. However, the Supreme Court case will impact the secondary IEEPA tariffs. So if you're keeping score, bucket 1 was frozen by the shutdown. Bucket 2 was like a bad relationship. We had on again, off again shipbuilding fees under Section 301. Bucket 3 has remained steady. Bucket 4 is all about new, heavy, and medium truck tariffs. And buckets 5 through 7 is where all the magic happened this fall. Supreme Court oral arguments on IEEPA tariffs, rollback on Chinese fentanyl tariffs and agricultural tariffs, and a slew of new framework agreements that are on the negotiating table. Now that's your tariff tune-in for this fall. And your wrap up and your recap. I'm Derick Holt. I look forward to tackling more tariff updates with you. Take care.